Well, it doesn't matter what any government says about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is absolutely decentralized and exists entirely outside of any individual, group, corporation, or government control. Governments are just waking up to the fact that they have no input in terms of impacting Bitcoin whatsoever, and they're moving from thinking, oh, we're going to ban Bitcoin, knowing now that they can't ban Bitcoin, to understanding that it's a fear of missing out, or FOMO. The countries that hoard and mine Bitcoin the biggest and the fastest are going to be in a much better position than the latecomers. That's the current position amongst various governments, except for in Europe, where they are literally brain dead, where the EU is coming out and making it clear that they're not interested in participating in the 21st century economy whatsoever. They died. The only thing, but they haven't been buried yet. So that'll come probably in 2022, because I noticed that the euro is going to be parity with the dollar and heading to new all-time lows, probably in the 60-cent region. So the entire EU can be flushed down the toilet, because the leadership there are bureaucratic, sclerotic morons. They can be just disregarded entirely. I think Elon Musk will probably buy France and turn it into a place that's worth going to. It's an historic event. A year ago, Michael Saylor mopped the floor with Frank Giustra in an awesome debate. Gold is still in the dumps. It's still the same price it was 10 years ago. Gold is dead money. Bitcoin, meanwhile, is continuing to continue to make inroads and triumph after triumph after triumph. So is Frank going to go full into the olive oil business now and give up trying to be a money manager, because he's almost as bad as Peter Schiff?
I didn't think you'd come out blazing like that today. And
well,
gold
let's get into it. I mean, you're in the media. Let's hit the floor running now that CNN is going bankrupt and all mainstream media is being discredited, and Elon Musk owns Twitter. You need to step up your game. Well, you come to Bitcoin who you are. If you're somebody who's into education and you're a professor and into monetary history, you write a book like Saifedean Ammous. If you're somebody like Michael Saylor, who is in the software business in Virginia, who's kind of close to the center of power in DC, who does, I would imagine, some contracting work for the government, you would have some comments about the U.S. government. Michael Saylor has also said he sees Bitcoin as being world reserve asset and the U.S. dollar as being world reserve currency. Now I never understood that argument. I don't think that argument makes any sense. Nobody who's looked at it agrees with him on that. And that's not going to be the case whatsoever. The dollar is completely being destroyed. It's being flushed down the toilet. The price is at a high relative to the last few years of performance, but usage amongst global economies is dropping. It's under 60%. It'll soon be under 50%. And we've seen a major sea change in the last few months, Daniela, because we went from a 40-year bull market in the bond market and a 40-year bull market in the, let's call it the Reagan-Thatcher era of deregulation and financialization. We are now in a new era, which is going to be driven by commodities, right? Russia basically called time on the era of financialization, and we're now on a commodity-based global economy. Russia, the ruble, is reflecting that. It's trading at some recent highs, as commodities take center stage. And the ultimate commodity, the commodity that Paul Tudor Jones called the fastest horse in the race, is Bitcoin, and it'll outperform all other commodities and all other securities and remain as the best performing asset for the next 10 years. But I don't see the U.S. dollar, as Michael Saylor argues. I don't buy that argument whatsoever. So I'm not surprising that he would have a favorable disposition toward comments coming out of the U.S. government. I don't see that as being important or relevant either in any case, but he's a guy who supports dollar as world reserve currency. So, I mean, if it's his MO, that's fine. But, I don't agree with it. And the Bitcoin is not in any way tied to any government's position toward it. Governments have only one decision: either start mining and hoarding Bitcoin or become irrelevant. Right. So you go from a unipolar U.S. dollar reserve currency to a multipolar world with a few different currencies out there. So you have the dollar, which will be a fading currency. You have a gold-backed ruble, which is going to be aligned with China, Iran, Brazil, the BRIC nations. And then you have Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is being adopted by countries. We see that now in Central America with El Salvador. And we can talk about this new fund we're starting, by the way, in El Salvador called El Zonte Capital. You can get information about it if you do an email to hello@elzontecapital.com. And we'll see other regions in Central America and Latin America begin to adopt Bitcoin. And now we see more action in Africa. There's a country in Africa today that just announced they're making Bitcoin legal tender. So that will be a big theme in Africa. Those countries looking to leapfrog the entire fiat money system and banking system and just want to leap into the 21st century, that they can just go to a Bitcoin standard and bypass all this malarkey with central banks and fiat money and all the bureaucrats. They can just go to a hard money Bitcoin standard and be immediately participating in the economics of the 21st century. So we're going to see that. So those are the three developments. As the US dollar fades away, you get a gold-backed currency in those countries that have been aggressively buying gold for decades, principally Russia, China. And then you have Bitcoin, kind of the breakout surprise hard money transformative currency in the world, and that has its own dynamics. They're not dirty Bitcoin miners. The secret about Bitcoin is that all the energy used in Bitcoin is either stranded or renewable energy. If you were to remove Bitcoin mining from the electric grid of the world, carbon emissions would be completely not changed one iota, because they're using stranded energy, they're using wasted energy, and they're using renewable energy. That's the vast majority of energy. And according to the Mining Council, which Michael Saylor started and he's a part of, the carbon emissions of Bitcoin, even though the hash rate's gone up dramatically, carbon emissions have gone down. So we're heading to an era of zero carbon emissions for Bitcoin. It's the cleanest energy, it's the cleanest industry in the world. So it's not dirty, and you can't use that word. Compared to gold, which is toxic, dirty, slave labor, it fosters bad behavior. The price is becoming less and less of a factor because they've entered into hyper-Bitcoinization. It's becoming a unit of account. So people are not, people don't ask what the price of the dollar is, and people are not going to be asking what the price of Bitcoin is, because it just becomes a unit of account. That's where we're headed. We're headed toward hyper-Bitcoinization, where people are just immersed in a Bitcoin world, and the price in fiat terms is not really going to matter much. It's not really going to be discussed, because we've moved beyond fiat. And with hyper-Bitcoinization comes a lot of other societal goods and benefits, which are more philosophical, but nevertheless, there's a huge benefit coming beyond just the use of Bitcoin as the ultimate store of value and medium of exchange.